finding now, as you see down there, that 46% of our college graduates, I believe in 2006, 2007, when the survey was done, have wound up leaving the state. Many of them left without a job. So jobs follow people, people follow jobs. Young people are deciding in droves they don't want to be here, whether there's a job or not, which is something very important. Again, gets to the issue of place. So we need to be moving on. The impact of the global economy, in terms of where we are right now, it's knowledge-based. We know that. Educations count, degrees matter. Any business can go up and down your street and look at demographic information and find out the college attainment in a particular area, the relative level of skill. If you can't do that as a local unit of government and you're not understanding in terms of what you're building for, you're missing the boat. Technology allows people to live anywhere, yet they're choosing cities. This is, again, is a huge change as we move forward. There are 60 million people around the globe moving to cities every year. So that's once a week, a city of more than 1 million people. A city larger than Detroit is popping up somewhere on the planet. Not really, but you know what I'm saying there. It's an amazing thing, and we're seeing that again too here in the United States. We're not seeing that in Michigan yet, and we'll argue that quite frankly we've been underinvesting and we've been doing a lot of things to make sure that we're not capitalizing that particular area, and that's some of the changes we're going to be looking for. But there is this huge population that's moving towards cities, and I like to talk about, we're now what are we, 1993, so we're 16 years now into the Netscape revolution where the Netscape browser came out. Remember, we were all going to live on a mountaintop somewhere and email our work in at night, and we'd ski all day and do other things that we like to do. That's not what's happening. 16 years later, people are filling up in cities. So office buildings aren't emptying out, downtowns aren't emptying out. People are actually gravitating to those particular places, which is really kind of an interesting thing. The population is mobile. Again, if you can do your job from anywhere, you're not stuck living within walking distance of a Ford plant, and then there's a steel plant or 50 second-tier suppliers supplying that plant within miles of it, so everybody's sort of cramped into a particular area. The jobs and the people are mobile. They move around quite a bit, so again, they can choose different places, but what we're finding out that place attracts the people. And then one of the points up there that's really important is a group out of Chicago called CEOs for Cities. And it's a group of business people and government individuals that have gotten together to talk about cities and work on city issues. They did a national survey and found that 2/3 of these young college-educated millennials decide where they want to live first, then they look for a job. Again, totally different than a generation ago. If you worked at Ford in 1950 and they said, you're transferred to Albuquerque, you went home, you threw a sign up on the lawn, you grabbed the spouse and the kids and off you went. It's not what we're hearing right now. It's not what people are doing. They're choosing to live in certain types of places, and we've got to be creating those places moving back. And obviously we're in a worldwide competition for talent. If talent can go anywhere. If people are mobile, why would they come to your community? I ask our local officials to ask themselves that question all the time. You can go anywhere, why would you come here? And that should really be the hurdle that we try to jump over. All right, here's the quiz portion of the program. Fast Company magazine. Who reads Fast Company? How many people? Okay, just a few. And a couple of them I make back there. Fast Company is kind of the Forbes or the Inc. For sort of this new generation of companies. It's not necessarily tech-based, but there's a lot of tech things. They try to find those new startups, those fast companies, if you will, find the next Google, find the next Apple, go out there and find out what's going on and really try to chronicle what's happening in that particular area. And one of the things a Fast Company does is Fast Company chooses fast cities. They choose the cities around the globe and here in the country who they believe are the best places to do business, the places where all this economic churning, if you will, is happening. And here is what they wrote about last year's Global City of the Year. And I'll read it for you if you're in the back of the room. It says, "It's shockingly expensive. The roads are jammed with traffic, the subway system's hopeless, and the buses no better. There's a surveillance camera on every other corner, and the sidewalks are strewn with litter. Biggest airport's a joke. The richest residents are fleeing or threatening to. The poorest have been chased out into the suburbs by soaring prices, and the weather sucks." That's the best city in the world, right? #1 place in the world to do business in this sort of new economy structure. Guesses? There's a free ham sandwich in the back for you. We have any ham left? Could be turkey. I don't know. London, England. And I think, I bring this up not because there's particularly a scalable community in Michigan to London. There's not, but there's a lot of things we can learn from this that fit directly into what we're doing here in Michigan. Here's what they did write about. They wrote those horrible things about London, things that we work on all the time at the local level, things that we worry about trying to impact, with the exception of the weather, although we'll probably try to impact that at some point too. But here's what they wrote about London and why it's so good. It tells you about the difference in demography. It's creative, young, diverse, and vibrant. Almost a third of Londoners were born outside the country. Okay, so it's welcoming to everybody. And all this churning that happens in an international state from international business, London is a great place to do that kind of work. 150,000 people immigrate to London yearly. 70% of the population of London is under the age of 45. It's a very young and dynamic community. 1 in 8 Londoners work in a creative industry. I think it's something that's very important. London has been the financial hub of Europe and probably of the world for 1,000 years? I don't know, a long time. In the next 10 years, the number of Londoners working in creative industries will outpace those working in the financial markets. And this information is about a year old, so with the crash and the craziness of the last several months, this is probably already happening here today. So it's a completely different kind of workforce. 38% of London is green, open space. We're talking in a minute about what makes communities special in this new economy, what we need to be fighting for. So over a third of the land mass within London is water and parks and open spaces that people are demanding in a very high, and this is a city of I think 6 or 7 million people too. And the last 2 points I think are particularly important for us here in Michigan. It says Londoners went from thinking as a manufacturing city to thinking and working globally. And a local official was quoted saying, London's creative resurgence is rooted in the city's changing sense of itself. Now, for those of you that might study history or just are generally active and engaged in some of this world of politics type of thing, 20 years ago, a lot of people left London and the UK for dead. I mean, the sun never set on the British Empire down to being sort of Rhode Island on the Atlantic Ocean for a while, and people didn't see the way for them to sort of climb out of it. They climbed out of it by working on this stuff. We're not working on this to the point we need to be doing here in Michigan. We're still old economy focused. So these 2 things down here, how can we look forward? How can we create new types of places? How can we be adaptive? How can we attack people and brains and talent and businesses and churning and entrepreneurs and the types of things that we know we need to be doing as a state and as cities within the state. We're not pushing that to the point that we need to be doing. We're looking at old demographics and still trying to recreate 1950 to a large extent. It's something we can't be doing. Big picture. The map over on the right side, which you can't read, is something from the Michigan Future Report, and I think it's very important, especially to this group representing the university. It chronicles the number of college graduates living throughout Michigan. And it compares Metro Detroit, Metro Lansing, Metro Grand Rapids to places like Madison and Minneapolis and Portland and Chicago and other places around the country. And what we find is our people obviously aren't staying here. The blue dots there, which you can't read, are college degreed people who live in the suburbs, which largely they do around the country. But the red dots where we really get killed on here in Michigan is college degreed people living in cities. Young people, young talented people are choosing urban environments to live in. And again, we're not giving them that capacity to be able to do that, largely because of the fact that we're not investing in those areas the way that we need to be doing. So when they're moving and they're going to Chicago, and they're going to other places around the country and even around the globe in some respects, to expect that they'll be coming back is something not necessarily that's going to be happening. So you want to link from the cities to the suburbs, there's your link right there. If young people graduating right down the road here at Michigan State don't see a viable alternative of living in an urban environment, they're not going to wind up in our suburbs moving forward. So I think that's very important to look at. And we also know empirically that states prospering in the U.S. have at least one major thriving metropolitan area with a high concentration of young creative talent. When you start looking around at what really matters, that matters in this new millennium, if you will. Those are the high-paying jobs. That's the entrepreneurial atmosphere. That's where the churning starts to take place. That's why Portland and Austin and Boston and Chicago and Madison and Minneapolis and all these other places are just completely outpacing us. They're not beating us on taxes. They're not beating us on regulations. Most of those places have higher taxes and more cumbersome regulations than we have here in Michigan. Yet we've still got this sort of industrial mindset that we've got to win on that stuff before we can start moving forward. We don't. We need to be creating these types of places. We need to be looking at a new way of doing things. The bottom of the screen, I think, is something that's very important. It's something we harp on all the time at the local level. And for those of you that have any marketing majors in the room? Anyone? No? Okay, next slide. the yellow slide